Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating article from LWN.net about open source adoption in the Mexican government. It's a real roller coaster ride of successes and setbacks.
Sounds interesting. Who's the main character in this story?
The article focuses on Federico González Waite, a Mexican/Kiwi guy who spent years in high-level government roles pushing for open-source implementations. He spoke at Scale 22X about his experiences.
So what drove the Mexican government to even consider open source in the first place?
Well, the big one was cost. Mexico, being a developing country, was looking to slash expenses. Paying for proprietary software licenses was a huge drain. Also, there was this push for what González Waite called IT sovereignty.
IT sovereignty? What does that even mean in this context?
Basically, it's about Mexico controlling its own technology and not being locked in by foreign vendors. Apparently, a lot of IT leadership wasn't very technical, so they were getting ripped off on software deals.
Ah, I see. So they wanted to build up their own tech talent and become an IT producing nation, not just a consumer.
Exactly. But it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? What kind of challenges did they face?
I imagine there were quite a few. Lack of technical expertise must have been a big one.
Absolutely. González Waite mentioned that they needed to train existing workers and bring in new people. But there was also resistance from vendors who had a vested interest in keeping things proprietary. And corruption, unfortunately, played a role too.
Corruption? How so?
Apparently, some companies were corruptly registering software licenses in their own names, which locked the government into using their services. Moving to open source was a way to break those chains.
Wow, that's pretty messed up. So were there any specific projects where they tried to implement open source?
Yeah, he talked about a few. One was with the Foreign Affairs Agency. They wanted to move away from Oracle to PostgreSQL.
Ooh, that sounds like a big undertaking. How did Oracle react?
Not well. González Waite said they were threatened and intimidated. Oracle claimed the entire passport system would collapse. But guess what? It didn't.
Ha! I love it when those threats turn out to be empty. So how did they manage the migration?
They reached out to the Mexican PostgreSQL community for help. It took about 3 months to migrate everything, and they even restructured the database to get rid of some shady storage practices.
That's awesome. What other projects did he mention?
There was a big focus on education. They realized that students weren't getting enough exposure to open source software, so they started internship programs and boot camps to train them.
That's a smart move. It's important to build that foundation for the future.
Definitely. He also talked about a project using Mifos, an open source platform for banks. But they had to spend 6 months educating the regulatory body about open source.
6 months? That's a long time, but I guess it's necessary to get everyone on board.
Exactly. And even after all that, one of the Mifos deployments got canceled, even though it worked. It was because of entrenched interests and biases within the agency.
Ugh, bureaucracy at its finest. So what were some of the key lessons González Waite learned from all this?
He said that regulations helped, but they weren't enough. There was still a lot of fear and legal liability concerns around using open source, and he emphasized the importance of having a champion within the organization who understands the project and can properly manage it.
That makes sense. You need someone who's passionate and can navigate the political landscape.
Yep. And he said the biggest lesson was that these projects are either a huge win or a huge loss. There's not much in between.
Wow, that's a pretty stark assessment. So what about the future? Is he optimistic about open source in Mexico?
He's a bit concerned. The new presidential administration hasn't been as vocal about supporting open source, but he's hopeful that the previous legislation will keep things moving in the right direction.
Fingers crossed. What about the issue of obsolescence? Open source projects can sometimes be abandoned.
That's a big problem, he admitted. Government systems often run for decades, but the dependencies might not be maintained that long. And with presidential changes every 6 years, it's hard to plan for the long term.
Yeah, that's a tough nut to crack. So overall, what's your takeaway from this article?
It's a complex story with a lot of challenges, but it also shows the potential of open source to transform government IT. It requires strong leadership, technical expertise, and a willingness to fight against entrenched interests. It's a win big or lose big situation.
Definitely sounds like a worthwhile but difficult endeavor. Where can people learn more about this talk?
The article mentions that a video of the talk should be available on Scale's YouTube page, so definitely check that out if you want to dive deeper.
Great! Thanks for sharing this fascinating story with us.
You're welcome. And thank you for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this discussion about open source and the Mexican government. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.